This is the 2025 Honda CBR650R with e-clutch. You all have been ranting and raving in the comments trying to get me to buy this motorcycle for years, and I finally have one here in the shop as our newest giveaway motorcycle. In today's video, I'm gonna give you a super deep dive on this machine, talk all the ins and outs, give you the specs, the ergonomics, the features, of course, talk in detail about this revolutionary e-clutch system that this motorcycle uses, a little bit about the history of this model, and everything else of the detailed specs that you won't find anywhere else. Now, of course, this machine is a giveaway bike on YammyNoob.co. We just wrapped up our Yamaha MT-07, and this is the newest giveaway bike we have. In a couple of weeks, this sweepstakes will wrap up, so head over to the website and become a member right now to lock in your best chance to win. If you don't want to do that, you can always pick up a hat, a t-shirt, hoodie. Every dollar you spend is an entry to win. And of course, you have the best odds of winning because we don't promote these giveaways anywhere on Facebook, Instagram, anywhere else. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're one of the lucky few that actually have a chance to win. Head over to the website, become a member, and get started today. Now, let's start with the biggest talking point, this e-clutch system. It's pretty rare we get an entirely new piece of technology on a motorcycle, but that's exactly what e-clutch is on this Honda CBR650R. What this is this small assembly that's sitting on top of the clutch basket on the side of the engine here. And with these two small motors, it can engage or disengage the clutch without you ever having to touch the lever. The best part about it, though, is that the lever is still physically connected to the cable and to the clutch, meaning you can bypass this system whenever you want when you're riding this machine. You can think of this as basically your entire body being a new rider, except for these two fingers being an experienced rider that's an invisible hand constantly pulling and engaging the clutch on your behalf. So this is similar to a bicycle, in which if you want to go up a hill, you're going to have to drop a few gears to get to the right cog. This machine cannot switch gears for you. You'll still need to be cognizant of over-revving or keeping it in the right gear at the right time. In a way, it operates sort of like a PDK system on a Porsche or a Tiptronic system from days gone past, but in a bit of a new way. Because the e-clutch can physically disengage or engage the clutch using these two motors, it presents a few advantages. Number one, you can give quick shifter options to this motorcycle by literally engaging or disengaging the clutch, as opposed to slipping the gear through the transmission by cutting ignition timing found on most quick shifter systems. Because it can do that too, you can get automatic downshifts as well in this machine, but you actually don't get rev matching because it's still a cable throttle. Let's head up to the top of the handlebars and talk more about this kind of strange system. All right, so let's take a closer look at this. Here on the left-hand side, you have the clutch lever with the cable pulling off of the lever. Totally normal operation as we pull this in. Now, once I flick this key on, take a listen. You hear that tiny little servo squeal? Now this lever has no more tension on it. This is completely slack, and you can see on the dash, we now have this A+ over here. Now on the dash, if you tab over here to the right, you can see we can enter in the system for the e-clutch system. Over here on the e-clutch, we'll see here it's currently turned on and the shifter settings are set to medium. But take a close listen. If we turn this off, servo disengages, this comes off, and the lever here to the left now has tension on it again. We tap this on, and now the motorcycle will be able to operate the clutch on your behalf. This is really a completely new system, really kind of a crazy paradigm shift for motorcycling. On the right-hand side, you can see that this motorcycle has a cable throttle, which again is kind of crazy for how advanced this motorcycle is. The folks at the dealership told me that this system works best if there's very minimal slack in the throttle. So you guys saw in my first ride, it works pretty well for what it is, but it might need a little bit fine-tuning depending on your riding style. You can see here towards the bottom that the motorcycle has what appears to be a kind of quick shifter module, but again, this works by disengaging and engaging the clutch on your behalf, different than a quick shifter module would just cut ignition and allow it to slip. But again, one of the sensors is going to be noticing if you're pulling up on this lever and requesting a shift, that's going to send information to the e-clutch system to disengage and engage the clutch. So it's a really, really neat setup. Now, the next point I want to make is actually about this frame. Let's get the bike up on the lift. Let's talk a little bit about what makes this machine different from the bikes in the category and a little bit more about it. Let's nerd out a little bit about the frame on this motorcycle. You guys hear me talk a lot about this not so super sport category and how they're never really gonna be quite like a true blue 600 homologated sport bike. But the real reason is the frame. The frame on the CBR650R is a steel diamond style frame. So what that means is the frame, starting from the headstock, wraps around the engine. You have these thinner components right here suspending the engine in the frame. And then you have this pressed piece of aluminum down here welded to this upper part of the frame, and the subframe welded to that pressed piece here. On a traditional 600cc Super Sport, you have a really thick, ultra-rigid aluminum twin spar frame. Aluminum is much lighter and more rigid than steel. Steel is a bit of an old school material when it comes to designing frames. Think of a steel cradle frame on an old UJM, but it does have some benefits. On this CBR, it means that this motorcycle is just a little bit more compliant going down the road. An ultra-rigid aluminum frame that has a giant thick member that connects straight down to the swing arm pivot point here with minimal welds is great for racing, but it's really rigid going down the road. Additionally, this subframe is welded onto this pressed piece, which is different than the bolt-on style you see on real super sports. Again, this frame and this construction is why it lends itself to being a little bit more of a comfortable ride than something like a CBR650R. Now, beyond the frame, of course, we have to move on to the beating heart of this motorcycle, this pretty sweet 649cc inline 4. Underneath all these plastic lies a 649cc dual overhead cam liquid-cooled inline 4 mill, making 94 horsepower at 12,000 RPM and 46 foot-pounds of torque. Now, other than the ZX4RR, this inline 4 is very unique in this category of not so super sport machines that's dominated by parallel twins and to a lesser extent 3 cylinders with Triumph's Daytona 660. This inline 4 has been around for quite some time. You can trace the lineage of this motor all the way back to 1990 in the original CBR 600 Hurricanes. In the early 2000s, Honda bifurcated their CBR lineup to have a pretty race-ready homologated version in the CBR 600RR, the 2003, and then you had the CBR 650 categories that this bike was based off of and came after. Back in the early 2000s, everybody had a tamed 4-cylinder and a race-ready 4-cylinder on showroom floors. This is really not the way things are anymore, with things being cross-platformed with 2- and 3-cylinder engines as opposed to 4-cylinder, giving this thing a pretty unique character in the marketplace. This model originally debuted in 2014 and has seen lots of updates throughout the last 11 years or so, but in my opinion, it really kind of failed its way upwards into this new category, and I wouldn't be surprised to see certain other Japanese motorcycles make their way into this new not-so-super sport category as well. By far, one of my favorite features on this motorcycle is the way that the 4 exhaust pipes sit from the side of the engine and from the front. You can really tell Honda is proud of the fact that this is a 4-cylinder machine, and if people don't recognize by the sound, they certainly will recognize by the number of pipes gleaming in the sun. So it's got a relatively willing frame, a peppy 4-cylinder engine making nearly 100 horsepower. It has an E-clutch system that's pretty revolutionary. Where does this motorcycle give up the ghost? Well, let's get an ergonomics check and talk through the suspension and the weight, because you might start to see the intention of this motorcycle as we go through those specs. All right, let's swing a leg over the CBR650R. As a reminder, I am 5'11" with a 32-inch inseam. I weigh right around 170 pounds. Sitting aboard this machine, the seating position is really, really close to a GSX-8R or a Daytona 660. You'll notice that the clip-ons have a slight raise to them. They don't sit really nice and low. You have a little bit higher reach to the bars here. The gas tank shape is actually a little bit more bulbous. On a traditional Super Sport, it's wide, it's flat, it allows you to get in that attack position. But on this motorcycle, things are a little bit more chilled out. 31.9-inch seat height. You guys see I can pretty comfortably flat foot this machine with a nice bend in my legs. Even though it is an inline 4, it's pretty narrow through the gas tank here, so you should be able to get a good bit of purchase on it. Now, the elephant in the room, emphasis on elephant, is this motorcycle weighs 466 pounds. That's 63 pounds more than the MT-07 we just had here as a giveaway motorcycle. There's no getting around it. This bike is heavy. Now, by the time this video comes out, you'll have seen on my first ride how that influences its handling, but here's static in the shop. There's no getting around it. There's some heft to this machine. It's a full-sized bike. It's a large motorcycle. I don't really think this bike is exactly appropriate for beginner riders, given that 94 horsepower mark, 466 pounds wet and ready to ride, and a price point of $9,899 on the showroom floor. To me, all of those metrics make this bike a little too advanced for the vast majority of beginner riders. This motorcycle is really cool though as a second motorcycle. I think much like the GSX-8R, the Yamaha R7, even this motorcycle, we call them in the beginner plus category, maybe even intermediate. This bike has always kind of straddled that line between a beginner bike and an intermediate bike. I really don't think this motorcycle makes a lot of sense for a first-time rider unless you have a lot of prior experience with two-wheeled vehicles, power sports, that sort of thing. Up front handling suspension, we have the Showa big piston single function fork. That means that rebound and compression are handled independently in each fork leg. That is definitely lower end of the spectrum type of hardware on this machine. Normally on more advanced super sports, you have rebound and compression on each leg, giving you much more refinement and capabilities in the front fork. No adjustability, not even preload from what I can tell. This motorcycle's front end is as it comes. Stopping the motorcycle up front is a pair of radial mounted Nissan calipers. These are pretty good spec for this machine, pinching 310 millimeter rotors at a axially mounted brake master cylinder up front up here with an adjustable lever. This is mid-grade hardware. I like the radial mounted brakes. That is a necessary thing on a motorcycle costing this much money. I would hate to see axially mounted brakes on this machine. So I think the hardware makes sense, and for its application, which is 99% road, this is more than adequate. This motorcycle also comes with Honda's torque control system. This does not have a fancy 6-axis IMU. It cannot do cornering ABS or any type of lean sensitive traction control. All it's really going to be able to do is sense rear wheel slip and then retard the ignition timing or back out the power a little bit. That's all it can really do. That's just going to sense wheel slip and then try to make it not slip. Again, because this is a cable actuated throttle, it's not going to be doing anything to the throttle opening because it is a manual setup. It can't really do anything with that. Of course, being a cable throttle means we don't have cruise control on this machine either. This is a feature that I think is going to come on this motorcycle at some point. I think it's crazy that Honda has made this bike to have a cable throttle and no cruise control, especially with all the more advanced features on this bike, like the e-clutch, like the torque control system, the fancy TFT. Everything else feels pretty 2025, except for this cable throttle here. And I don't mind a cable throttle. I actually prefer a cable throttle a vast majority of the time. But this machine's cable throttle doesn't really fit with the rest of the ethos. I would have loved to see ride-by-wire and cruise control included on this machine. I think that'd make it a killer hit. Out back is a preload adjustable Showa shock. Nothing to write home about. No adjustability really other than preload to make sure that the sag sits for your appropriate weight. I would estimate that riders between sort of 5'5" and 6'4" could pretty comfortably fit on this machine. As you guys can see here, I have a pretty good reach to the bars. I'm a pretty average sized guy, and I think that standing here, my back isn't too leaned over, and the look out of the cockpit feels really premium to me. Honda does a really good job of being the most upmarket Japanese manufacturer. It's why their motorcycles command just that little bit extra price point. The look out of the dash, it's premium, it's nice. I love the red and the white Honda here, the little Honda badge. This to me feels like a very quality product when I sit on it from the saddle. Couple other things to note, the saddle itself is pretty cushioned, has some nice red stitching on it as well, and you could certainly tack on quite a bit of mileage on this thing. This motorcycle to me feels very similar to the GSX-8R in the sense that it is sort of sport touring-esque. This is not exactly full-on race bike, it's not exactly full-on touring bike. This definitely is somewhere in the middle for its use case. It's designed to be an all-rounder sport bike for the street. Let's look over some of the finer details on this machine and show you guys some stuff you may not see in other reviews. I thought this was a really nice touch on this model. You have these blacked out and knurled brake lever and shift lever on this machine. This gives a really nice upmarket feel to this bike that you don't really see in other motorcycles in this category. Usually they have just like a really cheapo cast aluminum piece, but this feels and looks really quality. That gorgeous exhaust that it comes with is unfortunately a single piece. So you will not be able to slip on a muffler on this and get it to be a little bit louder. If you wanted to do any exhaust modifications on this motorcycle, you're looking at putting a full system on and getting a flash. No way about it. It's gonna probably run you about $1,500 to $2,000 to do that, and I personally wouldn't recommend it. One thing I haven't seen many people point out is the fact that this motorcycle comes with floating discs up front. That's kind of a high-end feature that's usually only found on more mid to high level sport bikes. They look really nice too with the blacked out hardware, the floating discs. The MT-07 does not come with a floating set of discs, and at 310 millimeters, this is some pretty nice braking hardware on this machine, and it looks really good too. Standard equipment on this model is the Dunlop Road Sport 2. That is not a tire that I'm super familiar with. I would have really loved to have seen something more like the Michelin Pilot Road 6s, maybe a Bridgestone S23. Not really sure why we have the Road Sport 2 on here, not a tire I'm super familiar with. Certainly to cut some costs, OEM tires are never really the best thing, but you know, we're working with what we got here. New for 2025 is this updated face. Looks more like a CBR 1000 if you ask me. These little ducts right in here, from what I can gather, it looks like they just kind of vent out to over here, kind of just dispersing air. There's no ram air system on this bike or anything like that, although it does look pretty cool. Here's a little bit more of that stitching on the seat. This looks really quality to me. You have two different types of material here. You got the stitch, you got this kind of textured leather right here, and then this actual part of the seat here. This is a really great looking unit, and I really think it matches the vibe of the bike too. Underneath the seat, it's all very tidy, very Japanese. You have a pretty generous little cubby hole over here. You get a pretty extensive toolkit we're about to take a look at underneath the seat here as well. Fuse box is nice and covered, and yeah, it's just what you come to expect from Japanese bikes. Just really nice under the seat, packaged really well, very neat and tidy. Here's what comes inside the tool bag on the CBR650R. You get a 10 mil, a 14 mil ratchet, little screwdriver set, Allen key, preload spanner, and of course, the Honda Chinese finger trap. Well, maybe this is a Japanese finger trap. You guys let me know in the comments what you think this is for. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's deep dive look on the Honda CBR650R. Remember, this is a giveaway bike on YamiNoob.co. We wrapped up our MT-07. Now we're doing this bike for April. We're gonna have a brand new bike in May as well. Become a member today and get your best chance to earn a brand new motorcycle for free. Head over to the website, become a member, support the show. It's the best way to support what we do here. Remember, this bike is up for grabs. Pretty cool machine, really well executed from Honda. I have a lot of good things to say about this bike. Be sure to stay tuned for all of our detailed content. We have track tests, e-clutch exclusive testing with this bike. We're gonna do slow speed, see if it'll wheelie, just try all kinds of stuff to see if this e-clutch can actually work in all given scenarios. We're gonna be doing a detailed comparison video of this bike and all of the competition as well. Make sure you stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for checking out today's video. I truly do appreciate it. We'll catch you in the next one. See you later. Watching Yami Noob!